Coming up on this week's edition of the Mindset Podcast, episode 174, we talk Black Friday and employment, Ukraine violence, Scottish independence, the big issue, and so much more. Here's the music.
I bid you welcome.
BBC News from BBC World.
This is an NBC News special report.
This is a CBS News special report.
Hello, a very good morning. You're watching BBC News with Carrie Gracie and Simon McCoy.
From ITN News at 10.
Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be around this wild, wacky, and sometimes disturbing world of ours. This is the Mindset Podcast, coming at you. I'm Gareth in Los Angeles, California, and joining me a mere 5,000 miles away from Oxfordshire in England, the one, the only, Mr. Ben Emlyn-Jones. Hello,
hey,
Ben.
Gareth.
How you doing, man?
Not bad. I'm glad I live so close to you, you know. It could be worse.
Yeah. We're getting closer and closer. I guess the continental drift, you know, the tectonic plates are moving around. So next thing we know, we'll be fucking neighbors.
I'll be able to just pop over and do the show live from your place, won't I?
Yes. Just run across the road, across the street.
Unless the Earth is expanding the way that the what's his name says it is.
Yeah, then
I can't remember his name.
Then we'll never get together. We'll keep going and going and going. So the Earth is expanding and it's getting bigger and bigger, a big bubble.
Apparently, yeah, it is. It's expanding slowly but surely. This is what's happening. The whole Wegener Atlantic drift thing, or the continental drift thing, is actually not true, and really everything's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Why? How? I don't know. Where the material something's filling up the inside of the Earth.
Yeah,
I don't know where
to push
it's coming
it out.
from.
Maybe we'll pop.
Maybe like a balloon. Yeah.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. Well, at this point, I would bring in the rest of the gang, but they've all split.
Yeah. You know what it is? It's Thanksgiving. We don't have Thanksgiving in this country, but it's an excuse for our piss up, isn't it?
Well, that's true. That's very
you
true.
overindulge. And Trevor, of course, I know Canadians hibernate in winter, but Trevor's a hospital porter. Well, surely he doesn't need to.
Exactly. He should be ready to go. Now, hopefully, Trevor will pop in maybe throughout the show. Maybe if he can get up and get on the computer, we'll say hello to Trevor. But everyone else has kind of bailed. It seems like the Mindset Podcast is rapidly becoming a feast or famine situation. We either have way too many people than we need, or not.
We had all 6 of us last week, didn't we?
Yeah, we had the full crew last week, and this week it's just me and you. But not to worry. I think we got a great show planned. We got some great topics, some great discussions, and no doubt we'll have a great show. So, Ben, what have you been up to?
Excuse me, quite a bit actually since I last saw you. Friday night, I went on a ghost hunt at this little old pub in Leicestershire.
Oh my gosh, a ghostly haunted pub in Leicestershire.
Yeah. I went
did you go with like a ghost hunting crew, or just a couple of your buddies said, "Hey, let's go hang out at a haunted club"?
I went along. I would always go with a professional crew. I'd never just go along with any old luders from the pub. No, I went with a professional ghost hunting team called GSI Paranormal UK, which is run by a guy called Don Phillips, who I've spoken to a lot. I've interviewed him on CMR, and he invited me along as a kind of media representative, although I got involved with everyone else.
Okay.
Had a great time. Did some filming with him, and but also got involved with the investigations.
Now, you spent the entire night, you did like an overnight vigil?
Yep, it was right through till about 5 a.m. A good old-fashioned portering night shift. I mean, I felt a bit nostalgic, actually, by the end of it, while I was falling asleep on my feet. But, this is a very, very old... It's a pub that dates back to the 17th century. Apparently, in the late 18th century, there was a big fire, and a number of people got killed, including some children, including a child called Annie and a boy called Gus.
Right.
And someone called Thomas as well. One of the ghosts has been talking. The people who live there, the landlord, the landlady, and the staff and regular drinkers have reported strange experiences there, hearing strange voices, hearing footsteps, and interference with electrical equipment, that kind of thing.
So you picked up some EVPs when you were there? How did that go? What kind of equipment did you take?
Yes, we had a K2 meter to pick up the magnetic fields. We also had voice recorders, a whole series of voice recorders, some cameras with low light capability, thermal imaging and things like that. And our main tool was voice recorders. These Don has had a lot of success with EVPs. He has a whole series. He has a series of voice recorders which he always formats beforehand.
Right.
He always allows everyone there to examine them to make sure they're okay. And then he allows us to we just use them and pick up anything.
Did anyone else bring their own equipment? Could you like bring your own recorder and stuff?
You can do, yes. Some people did. Some people had their own cameras and their own.
Did you pick up anything on your equipment, on your camera?
I didn't actually get my camera out very much, but I did. I haven't checked yet. I'm afraid I haven't had time to actually look at it yet. I was basically sleeping most of yesterday, and I know that the camera that was there picked up a number of sort of orbs, and apparently there's a difference between orbs and dust. Yeah. And this guy who's running the camera there did pick up some real orbs. And we had a lot of success with EVPs.
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned this earlier that they used the voice recorders, and now there's a few things with EVPs. I mean, Reeves and I have done a Power Talk specifically on EVPs. I think we did a 2-parter way back. So check out that, folks, if you want to go back and listen to some very cool EVPs.
It's a very good show, yeah.
You can do. There's a number of things. Some EVPs are completely unintelligible, right? But they're clearly a human voice. You can tell immediately that it's either male or female, young or old, but you might not be able to decipher what they're saying until somebody says, "Oh, look, listen to this. He's saying, look behind you." And then when you hear it, and then they front-loaded you with what it's saying, and you're like, "Oh, yeah, now I hear it." But if they hadn't have told you that, there's no way you would have heard "look behind you," right?
Yeah. That's right. Some of them are just static, but I mean, it's rather like these people who used to play their records backwards and hear Satan.
Yes.
It's some of them are simply just noise on the recording, which, I mean, this predates digital recording.
Oh, yeah,
people
absolutely.
get this on tape, even on some records have EVPs on them.
Exactly, yes.
And some of them are simply just noise, but sometimes you do get intelligible voices, and Don picked up a couple of them.
Sometimes you'll get some where it's 100% clear, and there's no front loading involved. You instantly hear exactly words and phrases. No, there's no question. That does happen, but that is kind of rare. Usually it's just like a garbled voice that you listen to, and it's, that sounds like they're saying, whatever. So so as far as the clarity of what you were picking up, now I'll ask you a few things. Number one, could you tell by listening to the voice if it was male or female?
Sometimes, yes.
Could you tell if it was a child or an older person?
In one case, you could tell it was a child.
And could you hear what they were saying without anyone telling you what they were saying?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay.
Not on all of them. On a few of them, you could, yes.
All right. Then those are. If you can hear what they're saying without anyone saying, "Oh, look, listen, they're saying this," then that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean, it's not all of them like that, but we did get Don and some of the others got a number of EVPs. One of them, there's a few that were particularly impressive, like the sound distinctly sounds like two young boys, and you can actually hear echoing as if they're in an underground room. And we did take a visit to the beer cellar just before we went. Although the thing about it is that the beer cellar is not the original one that was used in the 18th century. And also, that one's now been filled in, but there's a story behind that, incidentally. But we actually got those EVPs when we were sitting in a circle upstairs in the function room when we went. But the interesting story is that what Don has reported in his discoveries is that he picked up voices of ghosts or spirit voices that said things about burying babies. Now, this sounds pretty awful, but it's because Don did this investigation. The actual landlord called in the brewery to investigate. They did some looking around, and apparently there are graves underneath the old cellar, which is why the cellar was filled in the first place, apparently. But there are graves down there, which is very, very interesting indeed.
That is. Now, I will look forward to your video, which I'm assuming will be published sometime this week. It'll
come as basically the videos are filmed on Don's equipment. Don is making a video of his own plus mine.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you're just going to give him the footage that you made, and he's going to edit it all together.
Well, to be fair enough, he did the filming on his equipment. He's got much better cameras than I have, and
right. But did you take your camera and do your usual travel log kind of deal like you usually do?
I did, but I didn't do very much. I mean, I was quite busy when I was there, and I'm sorry to say, sorry to be. I feel a bit ashamed, really, but I was dropping off to sleep at one point. I thought, like, not me. It was nodding off now and again, you know.
Well, if you're up all night,
I should. But the thing about it, there wasn't a lot of time actually to do my own filming because Don was doing so much filming himself, and I did some filming with Don.
Yeah.
John has the footage which he says he's going to send to me for my channel.
Right.
He's also preparing a documentary on his own channel, which will be up on GSI Paranormal UK on YouTube.
All right.
So I urge you listeners. There's already some really, really good programs actually. Will you put this in the show notes, Gareth? Cause,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll put a link in
there's
there.
some brilliant videos already up there, including some things he's done in TV studios.
Right.
He's done some investigations in TV studios. He's done some investigations in all kinds of really, really amazing places.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the guy, so I don't know whether he's on the level or a mental case. But I'll definitely take a look and see what he's up to.
Reeves will have heard of him.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. I'll put a link in, and I'll look for your footage and the footage that comes out from this, because that sounds fascinating. Speaking of EVPs, though, something weird happened here in Mindset Studios about 2 or 3 weeks ago. This happened with me and Reeves. We were recording Paratalk, and just before we were going to start the show, I was recording, and we record the show and everything, and then I go back and I edit it and mix it up and get it all ready to be published. And usually when I'm editing, I got my headphones on and I'm listening to the playback while I'm editing and putting in the music and blah 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 and all that stuff. And I noticed something very strange with my voice, just for like 3 seconds on a particular phrase that I was saying. And this was from the episode of Paratalk when we were talking about macabre deaths and murders, where we were talking about some pretty gruesome paranormal events that involved some nasty murders and stuff. And I'm going to play it in a moment here so you guys can have a listen. I really don't know what to make of it. I don't know whether this is a genuine EVP or not. I'm kind of leaning to the not, but I don't know. I mean, this is me talking, and it should, just as soon as I start speaking, listen in the background. You hear something kind of malevolent. Listen to this. I think that we agree on a lot of things.
Blimey, that is spooky. That is creepy.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I mean it's like a kind of noise.
Here, listen again. I think that we agree on a lot of things.
It sounded like, I don't know, Darth Vader laughing or something.
I'll play it one more time so everyone can listen. Listen again. I think that we agree on a lot of things. It sounds like a laugh or something, but pretty.
It does, doesn't it?
Sinister.
That sounds very malevolent indeed. I mean, do you get a lot of static on your recordings? A lot of interference generally?
No, never.
So if that is just interference, then it's the only example you've got on your recordings.
Yeah, that's why it stuck out. It stuck out so quickly because I'd never heard that before, ever.
Well, who knows? By the time the listeners hear this, there may be some more. You never know.
You never
on this
know.
program.
Well, initially when I heard it, I'll play one more time just so you can have a listen. Listen. I think that we agree on a lot of things. And one more time. I think that we agree on a lot of things. So the first time I heard it, I was just casually listening, and I thought, oh, what's that? And I went and I listened again. And first I thought, it was while I was talking, Reeves burped. He belched. Right? And I thought, that's probably what it was. So I hit him up about that, and he was like, no. He said, if I was going to burp, I would hit mute. There's no way I would do that.
And I'll tell you what, if Reeves burped like that, I'd throw garlic and holy water at him.
He said, there's no way I would do that while you're recording. He said, if I felt a burp coming on, I'd hit the mute button. There's no way. So I'm like, all right, okay, well, I'll take him at his word, and we'll cross that explanation out. So what else could it be? Well, I thought, then it might be maybe there was a glitch in the recording software, and it's like a digital artifact or something in the recording. And that may or may not be the case. I really don't know. And the third possibility is, EVP, right?
Yeah.
Or do you think
definitely.
there might be another possibility that I'm kind of missing?
One doesn't spring to mind at the moment. I wouldn't necessarily eliminate the idea of EVP in favour of some kind of really, really outlandish and stupid explanation, like flying truckloads of burning manure or whatever. But I mean, it's perfectly possible, especially because you normally have a clear line without much interference. I mean,
I can honestly say I have never had that issue before, ever, and I've been doing this a while. I've never that kind of effect or that kind of error or artifact or whatever it is has never ever happened before.
That's very, very strange indeed. I mean, it sounds quite horrible, and it's very strange. I mean, if anyone, I mean, is it possible to sort of like run it through some software that can analyze that sound more carefully?
Well, it's difficult to separate it because the sound is intertwined with my voice on one channel, so I can't really separate the sound from my voice because it's right there as I'm speaking. It's like if it was like I was to pause or stop and then you could hear it, then it'd be easy just to remove that audio. But it's intertwined in with my voice and the recording. So I don't have the expertise to separate it, even if it might not even be possible to separate the sound.
And that's.
But the thing is that it sounds pretty dark. It sounds pretty malevolent. It sounds like maybe a sinister chuckle or something like that.
It does, doesn't it?
But as to what it could be, I mean, I really don't know. I kind of lean towards some kind of digital artifact or some kind of error or something along those lines. But I've never had anything like that before, ever.
It's possible it is some kind of digital computer error that we haven't thought of, and this is always a possibility.
Sure.
But I think unless it happens again, I don't think we're going to have, or it happens more often, and you may not ever get an answer to this mystery.
Yes, I know. Yeah, but let me play it one more time, just to for listeners to have a quick listen. It does sound like a kind of dark demonic cackle, right next to my voice. Have a listen one more time. I think that we agree on a lot of things. It's like,
yeah. I wouldn't want to. I hope you can see your reflection in the mirror still, Gareth.
So, I mean, it is what it is, but what are you going to do? But I thought that we'd play that to get things going here on this week's edition of the Mindset Podcast. All right, then, Ben, let's talk a little bit about Black Friday. Now, here in the U.S., this past few days has been Thanksgiving weekend and Thanksgiving and blah, blah, blah. And everyone went on Thursday and ate turkey and ham and, and watched the game and blah, blah, blah. And then on Friday is Black Friday here in the U.S., where everyone collectively loses their minds and goes out for some amazing deals at the stores. And I have a clip here to kind of illustrate that fact, some of the nonsense that took place. And in some parts of the country, it got a little crazy. Have a listen to this.
Live breaking news.
Breaking news in Rialto tonight at a local Walmart packed with Black Friday shoppers. I'm Mark Brown. Michelle Tuzzi has the night off. This video shows police moving in to break up a fight. We're told more than 5,000 people were in line when the doors first opened. When not everyone was let in, there was a lot of pushing and shoving at the door. Also a number of fights inside the store over merchandise. Violence also erupted in the Walmart parking lot. And when police moved in to break it up, one officer suffered a broken wrist. A number of people were arrested there tonight. More violence, this time in Texas, where the fight for Black Friday bargains is turning some shoppers black and blue. This violent video is going viral tonight. The mayhem happened tonight at a Texas Walmart, where shoppers were trying to get a hold of the last few 23-inch flat-screen TVs advertised for $75. This woman wouldn't even let go when officers intervened and took her to the ground. More madness tonight in Arkansas as Walmart workers were taking the wraps off. Shoppers were pushing and shoving to get their hands on those same $75 flat screens. And in North Carolina, folks with TVs already in hand had to fight their way through the crowds just to pay for them and get out the door. Many local stores opened earlier than they ever have on this Thanksgiving Day, and bargain-savvy shoppers lined up to take advantage of the deals. Eyewitness News reporter Colleen Sullivan is live in North Hollywood, where things were a bit calmer than what we have seen elsewhere. Colleen.
Certainly were a lot calmer than with things we saw elsewhere. Very tame, in fact, at all the areas we were tonight. Here at the North Hollywood Target, a pretty steady stream of shoppers are stocking up just like a lot of other people across the area.
I have 2 pairs of pajamas, 3 pairs of jeans, 4 shirts. I have kids' clothes in here somewhere, and I have a pair of sweatpants.
And Sydney Love is just getting her holiday shopping started, and she's not alone. Hundreds of shoppers turned out for the early bird deals at the Westfield Shopping Center in Culver City. The mall opened at 8 o'clock, the first time it's ever been open on the actual Thanksgiving holiday.
I know it's not Black Friday, but it's 50% off, and I have to work tomorrow, so I had to come tonight.
Stores highlighted deep discounts to lure diehard shoppers away from their Thanksgiving celebrations, and most families didn't mind.
A wonderful day celebrating with family all day, and so now it's time to take advantage of the deals.
Family and friends, we've done the cooking, the sharing the meal together. Let's go shopping together.
Thank you.
Target in North Hollywood, also the place to be to load up carts full of discounted goods. TVs were wheeled away in numbers. At Best Buy in Atwater Village, the doors couldn't open soon enough for some who had camped out nearly a week to get deals. While most shoppers already enjoyed their Thanksgiving dinners, Sydney hopes she can get all the deals she can for her family and make it home in time for her holiday feast.
I didn't eat.
No?
Haven't eaten. My dinner wasn't ready. Hopefully they'll let me back in the house to eat when I get home.
And I'm sure they will. And of course, it was pretty controversial opening on Thanksgiving. We spoke to a lot of employees, and they were pretty happy making that extra cash on what many are now calling tonight Gray Thursday, the night before Black Friday. Reporting live in North Hollywood, I'm Colleen Sullivan, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Well, that chick who hadn't eaten, I don't think eating's a problem for her. She's about 400 pounds. So, I mean, I don't know about that. But dude, it was insane. So this, for the first time in, I don't know how many years, or if first time ever, I don't know. Because usually what would happen was, the day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday, the stores would open super early, or they'd either open at midnight on Thanksgiving or like at 5 or 6 in the morning. So people would camp out overnight. But this year, a lot of stores opened on Thanksgiving Day. That's as if, in the UK they had the Christmas sales and the stores opened on Christmas Day.
Yeah, they open Boxing Day over here.
Right. So but that's the kind of similarity if that were to happen.
Yeah, this year might be different. You never know.
But yeah, it was insane, and I actually braved the crowds this year.
You went down yourself?
I did. I've never done it before. This is the first time. I guess first time for everything in life. You got to try different things. So this year, we did it. We spent Thanksgiving in Fresno this year. We went to stay with my niece to visit her for a couple of days. We got back last night. And we went. We had our Thanksgiving dinner, and we were hanging out, and we're looking at the newspaper ads, all this stuff that's like crazy cheap, and we thought, what the hell? So we went and sat down in front of a Target store in Fresno. They opened at 8 p.m. on Thanksgiving. We got there around 3 p.m. There was already a bit of a line there, bit of a queue. So we sat there for a few hours to get in, and it was kind of chaos. I mean, there was no violence or anything like it was illustrated in those in that clip. It didn't get to that point, but there was a lot of hustle and bustle and jostling and things of that nature to get what you wanted to get. The big deal at this store was there was a 50-inch 1080p television for $230. Which was ridiculously cheap. But they only had 30 of them, 30 in the store. So I guess the first 30 people in the queue, in the line, they got it. Everyone else, no.
At least they didn't fight over it. At least these people were vaguely civilized. I mean, I can understand the attraction of a cheap store. I mean, I've not been known to visit places, of course, where I can get stuff cheap. I mean, that's natural. But,
yeah.
I mean, I find this a little bit sad, Gareth. I think this is a little bit frustrating. I mean, there's even a report from Britain now, which is unconfirmed, but Wirral Newsbeat, Black Friday launch at Asda, Birkenhead, hundreds wait till 5:30 for the launch. 8. As it struck 8, people went crazy. Woman thrown to the ground. People punched, robbed, and argument brewed for 70% off all electrical products. Everything sold out within 5 minutes. That's an unconfirmed news report. But
so wait, they're doing Black Friday in the UK now?
Well, according to this, it's only a Facebook page, but this is what it's reporting. But I mean, what I find sad, I think, is that you think people's passions would be aroused by other things apart from whether they get hold of the latest cheap Japanese digital import. I mean, when you think of what's going on in the world, in this country and your country too, and people just sit back and they put their feet up about it, and then get the chance to get a widescreen TV for $230, and they're ready to go to war.
Oh yeah.
I mean, this to me is very frustrating. I find this very frustrating that people have prioritised their lives in this way.
Now, I should say that even though when I was in line and we went into the store and all this stuff, there was absolutely zero violence. There was no, arguments or fighting or nothing.
It does seem to be rare, which is.
But I have to say, there was violence in the air.
So people were very belligerent about getting hold of them.
You could feel it. And I think that if somebody had said the wrong thing or grabbed something or did the wrong thing, it could have erupted. I mean, thankfully, it did not, and there were no incidents, but it could have. You could feel it when you're in the store, and this is bizarre. I'd never experienced this before. When you go in, right? They herd you in like cattle. So what they do? Let me go through step by step what they do to try and keep this organized. So they open at 8 p.m. At around 6:30 or 7 p.m., the store employee comes around and speaks to everyone in line, letting them know exactly what they have on offer. And how they're going to work it. So they came around and said, look, the big item is the TV. We got 30 in stock. That's it. 30. And then about 20 minutes later, they all came around and they gave everyone a map of the store. And on the map, it laid out where everything was. So you could look at it. And because everyone goes with a specific thing that they want to get, so they know where to go to get it. And then when the doors finally open, everyone walks calmly in the line into the store, right? So it's just measures all calm, walk. But the second you get into the store, everyone loses their fucking minds. Right? And they immediately start not walking or briskly walking, running down the store aisles to get what they need to get. And it gets pretty crazy.
It's just unbelievable. I mean, really, the ideal system would be to have somebody. It would be like Argos or one of these sort of like warehouse stores where you just order stuff and they bring it and they just do it. They bring in a new system because of the number of people and the number of offers. But it's sad that. Why is it though that when Parliament brings out a law where they're going to put people into work camps or whatever, people don't do that in the Houses of Parliament? Why don't you get lots of people going down to Parliament, thousands of people crowded outside, and barging in to go for the MPs and pick up the first MP they can? There's only 30 there. They drag them and shove their heads down the toilet and pull the flush.
Yeah. I think
this is what frustrates me. It's our passions are only aroused. It takes something like this to arouse our passions. Why?
It has to do with cultural conditioning. Now, it should be said, and I'll lay this out there right now, that not all, but most of the people in the line with not all of them, but most of the people in the line with me were people from low income areas. Right? There were people, the way they dressed and the way they spoke, the fact that they were covered in a million tattoos and didn't look the nicest people on the planet, led me to believe that these people were, they were wrapped in a million sports shirts and baggy pants and whatever. They were from a low income area, right? So they're from an area that's not very prosperous, that's economically challenged.
Yeah.
So when they have a chance to buy a 50-inch HD TV, which would normally cost close to $1,000 or more, right? Which kind of puts it out of their reach completely, right?
Yeah.
So if they want a 50-inch TV for their house, they can't afford it, so they either got to steal it or wait for the sale, right? So these kind of doorbuster, super cheap deals, they are magnets for low-income people. And of course, you know, any area that's economically deprived usually has its fair share of maniacs, right? People who are, you know, up to no good. So it makes sense that those kind of people are dragged into these kind of areas because you're getting a great deal. I mean, if most people, right, if you're comfortable, if you have a good life and a good paycheck and what do you care about? You know, you want a 50-inch TV? So you just go buy one. What are you, fucking sales? What are you in line? It's crazy. You know, you're not going to deal with that. It's only people that can't afford shit that are going to be drawn to this. And these people that are drawn to this, they would beat the shit out of you in a heartbeat. Right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
You know,
you feel a bit nervous there with all these guys.
No, not at all. But that's the kind of people that were around there. You know, it was just kind of weird. I was sitting next because we're waiting away. And I thought, fuck this, I'm going to stand. I'm going to sit down. So I sat down on the ground, right on the sidewalk, on the pavement outside the store. So I'm just sitting there, and there's this lady. She sits down next to me, and we're sitting there. And 20 minutes go by, half an hour goes by, an hour goes by, and we haven't really spoke. We're just sitting there, and I glanced down at her feet. And this is no joke, dude. There is a massive black widow spider walking towards her. And I said, oh, my God, look, there's a black widow. She went, ah! And I got up and squished it. So I was the hero of the show. I killed the black widow that was walking. And as we got up and started brushing our shoulders and checking, see, everyone all around us all started standing up and saying, oh, what's good? It's spider. But yeah, it was crazy. But it's all cultural conditioning. The idea that you need these things, you want these things, right?
It's the idea that, unfortunately, I suppose what I want to say to these. I mean, I've been in a situation where I've not had much money in my life. I mean, I still am, although I count myself lucky. I don't consider myself poor because basically I've got a roof over my head and food on the table. But
right.
I mean, for me, the focus of my passion would be, firstly, why am I so poor? Why can't I afford these things? And I'd be queuing up outside the house of the person who made me like that, or whoever controls the system that makes people that poor.
Right.
There's no need for anyone to be poor. I mean, there's enough resources.
Of course.
It's economically possible for everyone to have a 50-inch TV if they wanted it.
Absolutely.
It is an economical possibility,
sure,
but it's not done.
Right.
And that to me would be the focus. This would be what rouses my passions, not where can I get one really cheap if I wait long enough and I queue in a line and then run.
Well, it's not done because there's a power structure. There's an elite power structure that needs to be enforced and maintained. That's why these things are not done. That's why there is an economic underclass, right? That's why there are poor people. That's why, let's be honest, most people on the planet, the vast majority of people on Earth are poor.
Yeah.
Right?
That's it. I mean,
exactly.
I saw a scale once, so they did like a sliding scale of rich and poor, and it's like it's hardly above the bottom until you get nearly to the end, and suddenly it goes
skyrockets.
Suddenly it skyrockets.
Skyrockets with all the wealthy people at the top.
0.03% of people.
Sure. Yeah,
have more than $1 million or something.
Yeah. Is it 400 people in the U.S.? I think there's like 400 people in the U.S. own 87% of the country's wealth.
Yeah. And it's sad because, I mean, there's enough resources for everyone to have a decent standard of living. I mean, don't let anyone, the Agenda 21 people will try and tell you that we're on borrowed time and stuff like that because there's too many people that says, no, that's nonsense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's simply the system we live under, the system that's been engineered.
It's nothing to do with resources and everything to do with power structure.
Yeah.
That's why we're in the situation we're in. Not because we don't have enough resources, because the people at the top want to stay at the top.
Yeah, and they can't let everyone have it because they know they would lose that position at the top.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why it is what it is. I mean, and the cultural conditioning then, right? It's like I'm not going to be happy or fulfilled until I have a 50-inch TV screen.
Yeah, I mean, when you consider when you switch it on, the quality of the program that comes out of it, to me, it doesn't matter if it's 50 inches or 5 inches. It's just 99% of it is rubbish, and the remaining 1% that's good always ends up online sooner or later. So.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a firm believer, and not just in television, but everything, is that everything you can think of, 90% of it is shit.
Yeah.
Everything. Right? 90% of everything is garbage.
Mm.
We live in a mediocre world, right? Everything is mediocrity.
Yeah. The thing about this is, Gareth, I mean, there's virtually a whole sector now of industry which is designed to make shit look good. It comes out marketing and advertising, public relations, whatever you might choose to call it. That's what it does. It makes you go out and buy a drink at a bar because it's cool, even though it tastes like excrement and methylated spirits, but you make out it's cool and people will drink it.
Let me give you a description of the average person that was in line with me on Friday. So there was a guy like 3 people down from me, right? And he was there with his entire family was there. Okay, his wife, his 4 kids, and the kids were running around like fucking lunatics. And he was sitting there on a chair, on like one of these fold-out chairs. With his Android tablet, just fucking around with that as his kids running around like maniacs. Now, this guy was dressed in a Raiders football shirt, right?
Yeah.
Baggy pants, shorts rather, a massive Raiders football tattoo on his leg, and like $200 tennis shoes or sneakers, trainers.
Yeah.
Right. And this guy hasn't got a fucking pot to piss in. You know what I mean? I mean, this is not coming from some guy who's making 6 figures. This guy's not making $200,000 a year, right?
Yeah.
The guy's lucky he's making $20,000 a year.
Mm.
He's in line because he wants that TV. He wants that deal. He wants that big ass TV so he can go home, plug in his PS3, and play video games for 9 hours a day. That's what draws him out.
Yeah. Well, I suppose there's a part of me that says, well, that's fair enough. I mean, I do that myself. Like I said, if I can find somewhere, a shop in town which gets everything cheaper, especially since I got kicked out of Portering.
Yeah.
I'll go there. I walk actually right into the city centre because I can buy cheese where they sell cheese on the market, which is really, really cheap. And I'll walk all the way there and back again just to get a lump of cheese.
Right.
Because it'll keep me going. That lump of cheese, I'll get it for £5. It's like a 2 kilo block, keep me going for a week.
Yeah.
And it's understandable. I mean, I suppose I'd always go for that place, but I would still have it in the back of my mind to think, well, surely this is not fair. This world is not fair. And I try and find out why it was unfair, why I was in poverty in the first place, and I try and do something about that. And I'd be queuing outside the houses of whoever's behind it to demand why this system is like it is and demand that it be changed.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. I remember talking to someone about because
it's like Elysium, that film Elysium. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean that was. I mean the movie itself is not the greatest of movies, but the social commentary in that movie I found very accurate. Very accurate, right? Because you have most people, right? Not everyone, of course, but most people are doing jobs that they absolutely fucking despise, right?
Yeah.
But they're doing it because they need to eat. And it's illustrated perfectly in Elysium where, remember he goes into that room with the robot when he's at work, right? And he knows it's going to fuck him up, but he cannot lose that job. That job, as much as it's a piece of garbage job and everyone in there is a fucking maniacs, the boss is a fucking retard and whatever, he has, that job is his lifeline. Without that job, he might as well blow his fucking brains out. He might as well kill himself right there.
It's quicker than starving to death.
Right.
I mean, there was a scene in one of the Doctor Who episodes where it's set in the Depression in New York, and they want him to go out and do something really dangerous, fix something to the side of the Empire State Building, which will allow the Daleks to turn up or something. And they say, I'm not going to do that. We're going out there. There's a storm blowing. it's raining, we'll fall. Half of us are going to fall. And I'll say, right, I'll just go and get one of these unemployed guys to do it. And they say, all right, we'll do it. They're more terrified of unemployment than they are falling 1,000 feet onto the streets.
Absolutely. And that's the world we live in.
And that's what gives the elite such control, is because you couldn't invent a better system. People say this has just evolved by accident this way. Yeah. No, it hasn't. Because if it had evolved by accident, I'd say, well, if I wanted to invent a system to entrap people, I couldn't invent anything better than it's evolved by accident.
Yeah, it's perfect. And that's why people keep doing these shit jobs for shit wages and shit hours and garbage nonsense. They keep doing it because they're brainwashed that this, they need to do. It's like, we're only paying this for this job, right? And you look at the job and it's pennies. It's like slave wages. And you say, what are the hours? Well, the hours are 16 hours a week. And you're like, okay, so the money's shit, the hours are shit. You're going to be working all over the place. It's going to negatively impact your life, right?
Mm.
But if you don't do it, there's a fucking line of imbeciles out there who'll do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah. It's really sad because you go into the job centre now, and it's like every wage. It just says minimum wage. There's a whole sector of these jobs which is minimum wage. And that's if you're lucky. And if you don't, the thing is, that's if you can get them, and because they haven't, or those vacancies haven't already been filled by people who are not even being paid at all and are on job seekers allowance work experience.
But here's the thing, though, Ben.
It's depressing. It really is.
These piece of shit employers who are fucking over their employees every 3 seconds. If the employees just said, you know what, your wages are shit, your hours are garbage, the job is bullshit, fuck you, we're not going to do it. You watch how quickly those wages would rise and those hours would get better.
Yeah,
you watch.
That takes people who are willing to...
In 3 seconds, the wage would increase, the hours would get better, things would change because they need people to do that job. If everyone said, you know what, fuck you, we're not doing it. But that's never going to happen. Because people are fucking sheep. They will just do it.
Well, what they'll be told is what they'll be told instead is if you put up with this for long enough, you might get made a foreman, and therefore you can afford what you can't afford now. But then when the only way you can be a foreman is to kiss the boss's ass, and the only way you can keep your job as a foreman is to do his dirty work by treating the other staff like shit.
It's the dangling carrot syndrome, right?
Yeah.
They always tell you this. Say, well, yeah, I know this is not a good deal. We're not paying you much, and the hours are bad. But if you do a great job in 6 months or a year, you can become a supervisor or a manager. Yeah. And then you're like, ooh, if I work hard, if I keep my head down and do what I'm supposed to do. But it's all fucking nonsense. They don't give 2 fucks about that shit.
Yeah. And also, the more if you get that manager's job, you can earn a bit more money. But the thing is, then you're trapped. You're trapped even more. You're in an even worse situation because you now have to stay there. You have to stay, and there'll be a lot more pressure put on you to do as you're told. And to enforce policy, and there will be on the guy on the work floor, on the shop floor.
Right.
So you are now trapped. You can't go down. You can't go back, and you can't go forward. You have to just stay. You have to, and it's an appalling situation. This is why people are committing suicide in some more and more. There's suicides are going up. Depression is going up. Ill health is going up, alcoholism, it's all going up.
There was this was a while ago, and we talked about it on Mindset. I think Alex brought it up, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to think where I forget which country it was, but there was a guy that used to sell. He had a little stall, and he would sell fruit on the sidewalk. Right, he would sell fruit, and that was his living. Every day he'd pull out his trolley and he'd sell fruit to people passing by, and that's how he made ends meet. And the government said, "Oh no, you don't have a license. You're gonna have to get the fuck out of here." And he couldn't afford to pay for the license, so they forcefully removed him from the street where he sold his fruit, so he couldn't make a living. So he ended up just dousing himself in gasoline and burning himself to death.
Oh, God. This is all down to the fact that you were saying we need people to stand together and say we're not going to take this shit. All right? Yeah. That's what has to be done. But we've got a long way to go in that respect because, I mean, we've just had a situation. I've spoken on the show before about the People's Supermarket in Oxford where I worked. This is a workers' cooperative where everyone in there is a member, including myself. And we'd only work there for 1 day a month, but after a while, we'd get discounts on what we bought there, and it was all run by the members. Well, guess what? That's just shut down because people. It doesn't take. You don't have to sort of like become. You don't have to become what's his name of the Teamsters. What's the name who run the Teamsters? You don't have to become him.
Yeah.
You just have to, instead of when you're going along Cowley Road, right, don't turn right into Tesco's, turn left into the People's Supermarket. That's all you got to do. I'm sure you may have to pay an extra couple of pence, but those extra 2 pence goes back into the local community. It goes back into making the area prosperous and providing prosperity for the community. And the more and more people do it, the prices in TPS can come down, and the Tesco's will have to shut. I mean, this is what people need to do. Yeah. This is what you need to do, and it's not hard. No one's asking you to go and stick 2 fingers up to your boss and bare your ass to him. It's just a simple choice.
Although that would be nice.
Although, there may be times when you will have to do that. In which case, well, I mean, I've been in that situation, and I'm okay. I've survived.
Well, that's the thing. You see, I mean, everyone thinks that if you lose your job, your shitty job that you fucking hate going to every day, that's the end. You're done.
Well, yeah. Well, we have to survive. It's about surviving.
But it ain't.
You go through hell every day to survive. For what? So you can live on to the next day, to go through this, to survive to the next day, to do the very same thing for the day after. And aren't we entitled to better than that? Don't you want more than that?
Of course. And how many people? I mean, this is kind of interesting. This kind of ties into the whole employment rap that we've suddenly found ourselves in. But so many people are like, "Oh, I'm going to retire. I can't wait for retirement. When am I going to be able to retire? When am I going to be able to retire? And when I'm 60 or when I'm 55? When am I going to retire?" And a buddy of mine posted on Facebook a couple weeks ago. He said, Here's a few things you might not know about me. And he named all these things like, I'm this, I'm that, and whatever. And one of the things is, he says, I want to retire by 45. He said, I don't want to work no more when I'm 45. And I remember thinking, oh, well, that's interesting. You've just told me that you're working in a job that you fucking despise.
Mm.
Right? Because when people retire, what's happening there is that when you retire, it means that you're stopping doing what you fucking hate.
Yeah.
And you start doing what you love, right? Because if you loved your job, if you loved your work, the fuck are you retiring for? Right?
Yeah.
So the reason that you can't wait to retire, you cannot wait is because you're working, doing something, and you might be great at it. You might be doing a superb job. But deep down inside, you absolutely fucking hate it.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise, what are you retiring for?
Exactly. In order to do that, you have to work in order to retire early these days, you've got to work very hard. You've got to do a lot of overtime. You've got to work most evenings a week. You'd have to do weekends.
So, what happens, right? So you're working 10, 12 hours a day for 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is, until you retire. So now you retire and you're an old fuck. And all that fun shit that you wanted to do when you were younger, you can't because you were working at some retard job that you fucking hated.
Mm. And you'll be a lot. The thing is, if you do that, in doing that, working extra hours in a job you hate is going to age you. You're going to get older a lot quicker.
So you've basically pissed your life away focusing on bullshit that you despise, and then finally you retire and you can do what you want to do, and you're an old miserable fuck.
That's it. It's like, I mean, it's not. It's very possible that the rug might be put. Even that rug could be pulled from under you. I mean, in the old days, like in the NHS, it's been. They used to have a good deal. They used to have something called the superannuation scheme, which means a nurse could go into nursing. She could qualify at 18. She could pay just a couple. She didn't have to work every hour. She could just pay an extra £10 a month, extra £10 or £20 a month in terms of contributions to a superannuation scheme, and she could retire at the age of 48.
Right.
That you can't, even nurses in NHS can't do that anymore. You'll be lucky if you get away by the time you're 60 if you're a woman, and for men it's 65. Well, they're going to put that up. It's going up to 67 soon.
Most people don't retire anymore, right? Not because they don't want to, not because they don't want to get out of this fucking retard nonsense they're doing every day. They would love to, but they don't because they can't afford it.
Yeah.
Right. And this is illustrated every day. Like what was it the other day? I went through. Where the fuck did I go? Taco Bell or some shit. I went through the drive-thru and I ordered some food. And I'm looking through the little window where they're ordering, and there's always some chick serving you. You know, what can I take your order? And then you look in the background and see everyone running around in their retard outfits, and there's some dude who's like 60, fucking around, and I'm like, the fuck is he doing in Taco Bell? He's in there.
He's poorer than everybody else.
Well, exactly. He's not in there because it's my life's dream to work at Taco Bell. I've always wanted to work here. Such a wonderful company. Such a great corporation. Oh, I'd love to work. No, he's there because he has to. He'd drop that shit in a fucking heartbeat if he could.
I mean, this is upsetting what we're talking about. But I mean, I do say that there should be a happy ending to this, and there is a way out of this. And we just have to have a bit of self-respect, which means, and we have to be a bit aware. We just have to be a bit aware of the kind of world we're living in. And that's, instead of just thinking to myself, well, how am I going to afford my extra big TV? We've got to think about, well, what can I do to change the world so that it'll be easier for us all to have a decent standard of living? So, I mean, one of the things I've already said, one of the things we can do when you're walking down the street and you have a choice of going into a big multinational conglomeration like Walmart or Tesco or something, and across the road there is a community small business that's opened up, a workers' cooperative, a small locally owned company. Use the small local business. Don't use the big corporations. And then again, when it comes to work, and employment, try everything you can to get into one of these other kind of corporations, these other kind of areas of employment.
I would say something better also, dude. Is that to make a goal for yourself, but make sure the goal has to do with what you love. And I always remember years ago talking to an insurance salesman, and this kid was like he was like 22, and he was selling insurance. He was driving a fucking BMW, making tons of money, and I kept thinking, like, I wonder if that guy, when he was 8 years old, used to lie in bed at night thinking, oh, when I'm older, oh man, I can't wait to sell insurance. Oh, it's gonna. Oh my. Oh, I want to sell insurance. Please let me. It's impossible. There's no fucking way. There's no way. So I mean, I can't wait to work at McDonald's. Oh, when I'm older, when I get out of school, it's my fucking dream job to work at McDonald's. Oh, I can't wait. No. That is not why you were put on this earth. Right? There's something inside you that's yelling at you. Do this. This is your happiness. This is what you should be doing. So go fucking do it. What are you working on all this bullshit for? Why are you letting this nonsense get in the way of what you're supposed to be doing? Go tell them to go fuck themselves, and you look out for you. Right? Am I crazy?
Yeah. It's absolutely true. And what's more, if your boss tells you do this, or you lose your job, or if your society says do this, or we stop your money. All right. Well, it's difficult if you've not been in that situation to know what to do. I've been in that situation. I said no. I stuck my two fingers up at them, and I'm doing fine. I'm doing okay. I've got an income.
Just because you lose your job, the world does not end. You'll still wake up tomorrow morning, and things will continue. Even though it might seem like it's the end of the fucking world, it ain't. It's the beginning.
And I think I've got an theory that people who do things based on conscience, for reasons of conscience, get looked after.
Yeah, eventually.
Something. I'm not religious. I'm not into guardian angels or saints, but I think something looks after you if you do something based on natural law and conscience.
I think you're right there. Something happens because something always kind of appears. When it's never what you expect, right? But something always happens. If you're aware, if you're a thoughtful, thinking person, things like opportunities and they just kind of appear, like as if by magic. Something always happens. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's never, no matter how bad it gets, it'll always get better. Always. But unfortunately, the reverse is true too. But everything is temporary. Nothing is permanent, right? You know, if you're miserable now, well, guess what? One day you'll be happy, and the flip side is true too. But it's very strange. All right, let's take a break. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, okay. I'll go and fill up my water jug or cut my wife I was doing.
All right, we'll be right back, folks. Smoke them if you got them.
Mindset Daily.
Mindset Daily, hosted by Joe Dunn, a twice weekly and sometimes daily wrap-up on the current news of the strange. Every episode will highlight and comment on news stories that have either not made it into the mainstream or just grabbed our attention. Mindset Daily, your bite-sized alternate news fix. You can listen to Mindset Daily at mindsetcentral.com.
Mindset Daily.
You're listening to the Mindset Network.
You can now hear all of the Mindset Central podcast while on the go with the Stitcher Smart Radio app. On-demand news, talk, and more on your mobile phone. The latest episodes at Mindset Central are always available for you. No syncing needed and no memory or storage wasted. Available on your iPhone, iPad, Android phones, and beyond. Downloading is easy. Go to Stitcher.com or check out your app store. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to MindsetCentral.com.
That was the Sadies with the first 5 minutes. Usually Joe Dunn would be here to fill us all in on the band, but unfortunately Joe is unavailable. But you can hear more from that band, the Sadies, on the Mindset Radio Hour, episode 45, which came out last week, I believe. So head on over to MindsetCentral.com and check them out. With lots more music, hosted by Joe Dunn. Check them out. The Sadies, the first 5 minutes. Very 60s there, Ben. What do you think? Very jingly, jangly guitars.
Yeah, I quite like that show. It was really good, kind of slightly indie kind of feel to that band, and I think I'm glad you played them.
Yeah,
pretty good.
Cool, very good. All right, let's move on to something a little more serious, a little more. I was going to say depressing, but again, yeah, maybe it is a little bit. Yeah, Ukraine. Some craziness has been going on in the Ukraine this week. I have a clip here from the BBC News. And the reason I'm playing the BBC News is because the coverage here in the U.S. as to what's going on in the Ukraine is very few and far between. So let's have a quick listen, then we'll talk about it.
It's clear what they want. Despite a brutal crackdown by riot police in central Kiev, less than 24 hours prior, they returned in their thousands. They're angry at the government's refusal to sign a trade agreement which would bring them closer to the EU and away from Moscow.
The powers that be are not working for the good of the Ukrainian people, and they cannot stop the revolution. The people who are here came from all over to show that together we are strong and that we will bring Ukraine into Europe.
The protesters had been holding a week-long vigil, demanding that their country move closer to Europe. But in the early hours of Saturday morning, it turned violent. Riot police forcefully cleared Kiev's Independence Square using truncheons. The Ukrainian president says he's outraged at the violence and has called for an immediate investigation.
I am indignant because of what happened last night. I can't even remember the last time young people and students were beaten until they bled.
They have beaten us, even the young people that Ukraine's future depends upon. The police force has tried to use its scare tactics.
Opposition leaders have denounced the government. They're calling for a national strike and more protests to force President Yanukovych to resign. As the demonstrations spill over into another day, anti-government supporters are expected to regroup at noon. The opposition plans to march everyone back towards Independence Square, the same square which police are now guarding. Tim Nielsen, BBC News.
No, I think the violence has escalated significantly over there just overnight, I guess. Have you heard anything, Ben, what's been going on over there as far as the news reports in the UK?
Sorry, I was just burping. I don't want to... It's not EVP, everybody. I've not actually heard much about this. It doesn't seem to have been covered very clearly, probably because we had an incident in Scotland where a helicopter crashed, and that's been... About 4 people were killed in a helicopter crash, and that's been the sort of like main headlines at the moment. It's been dominating everything.
Yeah.
But this, this is the first I've heard about what you've just played. But it sounds like the people in the Ukraine, so they want closer links with the European Union rather than with the Russian Commonwealth. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Well, this is this could be because. I think in some ways people in Eastern Europe want to be part of the European Union because from their point of view, it's rather like the guys waiting in the queue for the special deals in the shop. It's rather like that. They're thinking to themselves, what can I do in the short term to make my life better because my life's so awful.
Right.
And once they're in that position, and many people can actually move, they can actually move into Western Europe, which is what we've seen. And we've had Britain, for instance, has a lot of immigration from Eastern Europe. And that could be what the Ukrainians want. They want to get in a position where they can then make a better living by working abroad in countries within the EU, which will bring them in.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we see the same, not just in the UK or in Europe, but in the US also. We have a massive influx of people from Mexico and from other countries, where the economy is basically fucked and corrupt and and completely overshadowed by corruption and nonsense. Like in Mexico, for instance, there's really not a middle class. It's if you live in Mexico, you either kind of got everything that you need and you're cool, or you're fucked.
It's like that in much of the world, unfortunately.
Right. So, and if you look, and then they look over the border, and they have this kind of they see the lights of America And they think that they can come over here and make a better living for themselves and their families, which makes total sense. I mean, if I was in their shoes, I'd hop the fence in a fucking heartbeat. So they sneak over the border and get in here, and then there's the whole economic underclass again, because these people are illegal. Unscrupulous, thieving, corrupt business owners can pay them pennies. Can pay them like shit to do menial, hard, nonsense jobs, and get away with it. It just means more profit for them.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, this is surprisingly similar. This subject to the first subject of the show, Black Friday.
Right.
This is surprisingly similar because really, what I would say to the Ukrainian people, and you might say, well, it's easy for me to say, I don't have to live there. That might be the case, but it doesn't distract from the fact that. Really, in terms of long-term prosperity for their country, they're far better off not joining the EU.
Sure.
Because they will become the EU's boot wiper like Greece.
Yeah.
Now, this is the thing. They think, rather like many Mexicans, I mean, a lot of the Mexicans who are now working in slave labor jobs in Britain, in slave labor jobs in the USA, illegally, they're probably much better off than they would have been if they stayed in Mexico.
Yeah, in many ways. I mean, a lot of them, they come over here and they make money and they send the money back, to try and support their families in Mexico. And that says a lot for the government and the system. And imagine how fucked, how corrupt, when you have a mass exodus of your population saying, you know what, I'm out of here. I mean, how does that reflect on you? as a government, as a system of looking after your people, if a percentage of your population is like, fuck this, I'm out.
I know. I mean, we're living in a world where international travel has never been easier. And so what people are doing is what anyone would do. If they're living in a place where it's less prosperous, they'll want to move somewhere where it's more prosperous.
Sure.
Hopefully to gain some prosperity. Whether they do or not, that's what they think they're going to get when they actually
That's the illusion,
move.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of people from, Mexican immigrants that have come to the United States and done incredibly well for themselves, right? But that's the minority. The majority of people that come over here do not.
Yeah, I mean, the solutions that have been proposed to this. I mean, in Britain, there's been a lot of solutions proposed by far right groups like the English Defence League and the British National Party, and they've basically said, well, the solution to this is simply for Britain to strengthen its borders and to make it impossible for anyone to emigrate to this country through various laws, various reforms in border control and in law enforcement, things like that.
Right.
Now, I've said many, many times that people should not go down this route because this is the trap. I think the government actually may be using this as a trap to bring in more and more Big Brother surveillance and things like that.
Yeah.
The solution is, it's basically just like we were saying before. You want to ask yourself, we're living in a world of abundance. Why are people poor in one part of the world and less poor in another? Why is that?
Yeah.
Why is it now Ukraine want to join the EU when really, if they've had any sense, they would say, God, they look at the EU and what the EU really is, which is the creation of an international, unelected, post-democratic superstate, which is going to basically screw them over eventually. I mean, where they may be all right for a while, but they'll regret it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon and for the rest of their lives. It's a movie line. But they will. In truth, that is exactly what's going to happen to them. They will find out that they have to pay, like Britain, pay £70 billion every year to the European Union. It costs us $70 billion just to be a member. That doesn't include all the taxes and other things we pay towards them. It doesn't include the fact that our laws are dictated to by them, and including various common agricultural policies, common immigration policies, common various other types of legal policies, social policies and things like this, like the social chapters and other things of the European deals. They're going to have to go along with this. They're going to have to sign up to, and also the euro. They have to give up their currency and join the euro. Now, maybe you could say, well, joining the Russian, Vladimir Putin's Commonwealth is not a good idea either. And maybe that's a point. But the thing about Putin is we've talked about him before, haven't we? About some people are saying he's against the New World Order. He's on our side. No, I don't think he is. I don't think he is.
He's not.
I mean, in the short term, they'd be better. If they're thinking about what's going to happen for me in the next 10 years, then, of course, going into the EU, they may get 10 years of fairly decent treatment before they go down the toilet. If they go into Russia, they may get, if they join Putin's federation, they won't get those 10 years of prosperity. What they will do in 20 years' time or 30 years' time, depends on what the plans are from above in the Illuminati. I don't know what they got planned, but in 10, 20 or 30 years' time, they may not get the brunt of what the EU is going to suffer.
But you know what? I mean, something happened, I think it was this week, might have been last week, where I overheard a conversation. And this conversation speaks, I mean, it was an innocent conversation, but it was a conversation that speaks to the inherent goodness and sheep-like mentality of the human race. And I'm not excluding myself here, right? I'm very much a part of this. The price of coffee went up in Starbucks, right? Now, already Starbucks is exorbitant prices for a fucking, cup of coffee. Admittedly, it's great coffee, but still, it's a lot of money. And the people were saying, well, I think it has to do with there's a shortage of coffee. They're having problems harvesting the coffee, so there's a shortage. That's why it's costing more. Oh yeah, that must be it. Boom. Issue over. Conversation finished. Issue resolved. On to the next. Right? Now, no evidence, no critical thinking, no investigation, no nothing. Purely emotional, purely out thinking the best of people, of a corporation, Oh, I like Starbucks, it's good. They're putting the prices up because they're having problems. They're having a difficulty in obtaining the coffee that they need to supply us with. They're having a hard time. Poor Starbucks. It's so they're having such a hard time getting that coffee that they have to charge us more. They have to in order to survive. Oh, it's so sad. Right? That's the thought process, right? Because we're sympathetic, we're well-meaning, I mean, this is generalizing, of course. Of course, there are evil, scum-sucking pieces of shit out there in the human race, but most people are good, honest, decent people. The vast majority of people. So when I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, okay, so their heart's in the right place. But they're resolving it in a good way. But not once did they think, those thieving pieces of shit, right? Yeah. Oh, they want to make $2 billion profit instead of $1 billion profit.
They're kind of, what they're doing is they're kind of putting themselves in the shoes of the people running the corporation.
Exactly.
And saying, well, this is what I would do if I was running that corporation.
Exactly.
They say, well, if I'd been allowed to become the owner of that corporate Starbucks, I'd run it differently. I'd obviously, they're kind of thinking, well, the only reason I would put prices up is because I'm trouble getting hold of the coffee beans. I have to put prices up.
Right.
The thing about it is, if you have that attitude, they don't let you become in charge. They don't let you become a shareholder of Starbucks and a board member of Starbucks anyway.
But you said, I don't want to bring up 9/11, but I'll bring it up for a second. It's the same thing why most people don't believe that the government were complicit in 9/11. Because in their minds, oh my God, I would never do that to my own people. There's no way I could do that. Because I could never do that, then, if I couldn't do it, surely the government couldn't do it, right?
That's it. The government are good people. They're democratically elected.
Of course, they're good people. I could never do that. Therefore, they couldn't. And that's the kind of mentality that permeates the vast majority of people, right?
Yeah, they'll say something like, "Come on, my cousin's best friend is a congressman in Podunk, Nevada, or something."
Yeah,
and he's doing that's what our government is made up of, people like that.
Sure.
It's complete misperception of what's really going on.
What are you talking about? My best friend's cousin is a police officer, and I've met him a couple of times, and he's really nice. He could never be a thieving, backstabbing, psychopathic, bullying piece of shit. Of course not. He's really nice. He smiled at me and shook my hand and asked me how my day was.
And the exception just proves the rule. That's what they're trying to say, it's a completely false perception because, we had this discussion before, I think. I mean, I certainly talked about it on my other show, which is about the gas price rises we got in this country. They just put our gas prices up by 8%. My own gas bill has gone up by 8%. And this is the same year where they made record profits. And they sent me a letter explaining. They sent it to my landlord, but explaining, we know this news won't be welcome to you, but the price of fuel remains volatile on the international market, and we have to upgrade the grid, and we have to pay government taxes on stuff like this. And I thought to myself,
fucking nonsense.
This is ridiculous. This is an excuse.
It's lying. Nonsense.
Well, I know for a fact that this nonsense is going to cost the lives of several people this winter.
Oh, absolutely,
in Britain.
of course. Yeah.
A temperate country, which it doesn't go below about. It's not like Siberia. It sometimes goes down to -5, maybe -10 occasionally.
Right.
But it doesn't go very far below zero. It goes in single figures below zero.
But the thing is, though, Ben, is that in that kind of environment,
people are going to
die. Not because they cannot keep their house warm, but because they are scared to, because they don't want to get a massive fucking bill.
Yeah.
Right.
It's really it's a sad. It's people. We lose people every winter now, mostly old folk.
Yeah, because they're terrified. They're like, you know what? I'm in my house or my apartment, my flat, whatever. I'm freezing my fucking ass off, and I have full central heating. I have a fireplace, the whole gas fire, the works. But I'm scared shitless to turn it on, because if I do, 2 weeks from now or a month from now, I'm going to get a letter in the fucking mailbox saying I owe fucking £500 for some bullshit fucking heating. So let me just freeze to fucking death and die, so I don't have to pay this shit.
This, what it's all about. It's the whole thing is based on it's this ridiculous series, like we've been talking about in the previous story about Ukraine. We were talking about the Black Friday. But basically, we're living in a world of abundance. And we believe we live in a world of scarcity.
Yeah, This
is the cornerstone of everything.
We're living in a world of artificial scarcity.
Yeah, perceived scarcity.
Right.
That's what it is. We're living in a system
everything,
which is built upon engineered scarcity, and we're living in a world of abundance. We're starving men at a feast, and this is the cornerstone. This is the foundation of this story, the Starbucks story, the Ukrainian story, and the Black Friday story.
Right. Exactly, artificial scarcity, because the people
truth of the matter is,
sorry. Go ahead.
I'm going to say that, for instance, a lot of people from a lot of the immigration into Britain at the moment is coming from sub-Saharan Africa. Now, sub-Saharan Africa is a place where there's a lot of poverty, just like Eastern Europe, where another wave of immigration is coming. And people are so you can spot them easily, of course, because they're black people, and because they live generations down there, they're very black, and you can spot them very easily.
Right.
And they're getting a lot of abuse. They're getting called names on the streets. They're saying "go home, blackie" or "nigger" or whatever, and stuff like that. And they're getting treated really badly. Right. And people are pointing at them and saying they're the problem, and we need to vote for the BNP, get the borders shut, reform the law so you need your passport for everything, and stuff like that. And I'm saying to them, in Africa, right? The farmland in sub-Saharan Africa is some of the most abundant farmland on earth. You could feed the world from Africa alone, could feed the entire world if that farmland was used properly, if they used proper farming methods, and they also cleared the landmines, which has made so much of Africa uninhabitable. There's millions of landmines, there's millions of acres of farmland which are covered by landmines and can't be used. There's millions of acres that have been destroyed by drought. If you use, for instance, terra preta or ormus on farms, you could increase the yield of farmland by a dozenfold. If you use free energy, we talked before about free energy.
Yeah.
You could irrigate farmland from the sea where there's virtually an infinite supply of water. You could turn it into fresh water using free energy and pump it to where it's needed using free energy. I mean, if you you wouldn't even need to do this, actually. I mean, this is more bizarre areas, but I mean, if you simply cancel the third world debt, for example, that would revolutionise the lives of people in those countries.
Sure. But here's the thing, though, Ben. Everything you've said makes complete sense. But it'll never happen because it fucks with power structure.
I know. This is why Libya was taken out, Gareth. Libya was taken out because Colonel Gaddafi was going to first bring in a gold standard currency and not use the IMF one, which he was going to refuse the IMF loans, bring in a gold standard currency, export his oil using that currency. And what's more, he was going to tap into the aquifers below the desert. I mean, Libya may look dry. It does on the surface because it's desert country in North Africa. But if you drill down a couple of 100 feet, there's massive aquifers. There's huge underground rivers and lakes.
Yeah.
Enough water to turn it into a land flowing with milk and honey.
Right.
And this is why they took him out. Wouldn't it be if these were nice people who ran Starbucks and having trouble getting hold of coffee beans, right? They would say, Gaddafi, Muammar, well done, mate. You go ahead. You make your country prosperous.
Sure.
You sell your oil for a profit for your people, for prosperity for your people, using your own gold standard currency. You bring that water up to the surface so everyone can drink it and everyone can put it on their farmlands. So, this is what I mean, what you say, artificial scarcity, engineered scarcity.
Right.
And this is what it's about. This is what needs to be exposed to stop these other problems, these systemic problems from emerging. None of those systemic problems will ever be solved unless we get to the root of the matter and solve the ultimate cause.
And you'll notice, too, that any country in the world that says no to the IMF or no to loans from the U.S. or from Western Europe or any country that says no to all that, we're invading them.
I know, that's what we suddenly find that they've got weapons of mass destruction.
Yes. Anytime they say, "Oh, you know what? We'll give you a very large loan, right? So you can be our bitch."
Yeah.
Or why don't we get you hooked up onto our monetary system, so you can be our bitch? And if that country says, "You know what? No, we're okay. Fuck you," within the next 6-8 months, maybe a year. We believe there's terrorists hiding in this country. They have weapons of mass destruction. We need to bomb the shit out of them and invade them. And it's this fucking standard rule book. You see this constantly.
Yeah. It's like John Perkins, The Confessions of an Economic Hitman, that brilliant book.
Yeah.
Where he talks about how this was done. He was one of these people who did it. He was one of these people who organised these economic hits.
It's constant. I mean, you can see it played out consistently all over the world. All these little countries, there'll be a knock on the door. "Oh, yeah, we're seriously having some problems. Listen, we can lend you several $100 million that'll end your problem, and you can pay us, but don't worry, no, you can pay us back over the next 30 years. It's okay. Don't worry." And if they say, okay, they're good to go. They're in our back pocket. Boom. But if they say, nah, we're okay. Invade, terrorism, weapons of mass destruction, boom, bomb it. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Because they're after the resources of the country, whether it be oil or farmland or whatever, or diamonds or whatever the fuck. They want it. That's my shit. I'm taking that. Fuck you.
I've often said before, it's funny how war always seems to break out whenever they strike oil anywhere. And there's some good recent examples. One of them is Darfur in Sudan. Another is the Falkland Islands.
Yep.
And there's several others. But it seems that whenever someone strikes oil, war breaks out. It's almost like a rule. It's like a cause and effect thing.
Yeah.
And no one really knows why that happens. No one can. It's almost like a kind of, well, how come there is this link between the two things?
Yeah.
It's like, because these wars are supposedly fought for other reasons. We're told that the Darfur War was because of Islamic militants, and the Falkland Islands, the war there was because Argentina invaded.
Yeah.
And the things like that. But it's when you look at the more fundamental levels, you see there's more going on below the surface.
Absolutely.
Much more. And it's funny. We have to get around.
Yeah, it's all nonsense. It's funny you mentioned oil. My kids were digging in the backyard the other day, and they're digging this massive fucking hole. I'm like, "What are you doing?" They said, "We're digging. We're going to build a tunnel." They just digging. And my daughter said, "Imagine if we were digging and all of a sudden oil started coming out. We'd be rich." And I said, "No, we wouldn't. You'd probably hit a fucking pipeline and we'd be sued."
Yeah. Even that, they suddenly find out you had a copy of the Quran in your basement, and the police would be sent in. You'd be moved out.
Yeah, it's bizarre. But back to the Ukraine. They want to become a part of the European Union, and Scotland is starting to. They want to become their own deal. Huh? They want to separate from the UK, and I'm assuming the EU also. Well, what are your thoughts on that, Ben?
Well, ironically, no. This is the thing. This is the sting in the tail, right? What's happened is the Scotland is a very, very ancient country, very, very ancient indeed, and for most of the last 1,000 years of its history, it's been fighting wars of independence against England. I mean, I'm sure this is well known in America. I know America has lots of cultural links with Scotland.
Sure.
The Act of Union with England was over 300 years ago, 1706. However, you go back hundreds of years before then, and you'll find the various Anglo-Scottish wars, including the one fought by William Wallace and Robert the Bruce. This is covered in Mel Gibson's very highly acclaimed film Braveheart.
Right.
It's actually about one of these early wars.
Sure.
Which happened 500 years before the Act of Union, which was fought between Scotland and England, told from the Scots' point of view. So it's really this Scotland has been a subject nation for a very, very long time now. But we just heard, a few years ago, we were told that the government was basically handing on a plate, almost casually, complete independence for Scotland from Great Britain and Northern Ireland, United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. This referendum is going to take place next September,
next year,
in 2014. Yeah, and it's basically very simple. The question is, should Scotland be an independent country? And the voters have two choices: yes or no. If they choose no, then Scotland becomes fully devolved as early as March of 2016. So this is really, really incredible. And of course, a lot of the Scottish nationalists are really, really pleased. And I'll tell you what, a few years ago, when I was very much a Welsh nationalist, I'd have been pleased.
Sure.
But I'm actually now thinking, what's really going on? Because you mentioned, we've been talking about Ukraine wanting to join the EU. Now, Britain is actually much less keen on being a part of the EU than Ukraine is, and many other countries are. In fact, Britain is in the European Union, but it's a very reluctant partner. I mean, in terms of popular opinion, is quite Eurosceptic. In fact, we're one of the most Eurosceptic nations in the Union. And really, Britain has been a big stumbling block for the EU agenda. We've refused to take a single currency. There's lots of other things that the government hasn't been able to get away with, which other countries have suffered from, including things like the Lisbon Treaty and other things like that. Now, Scotland is very different. Apparently, if you take all of Britain as a whole, there's a lot of Euroscepticism, but if you take Scotland as a separate entity, it's far more. There's far less of that Euroscepticism. And now Alex Salmond is the First Minister of Scotland. He's published a white paper, which is a big 700-page, basically a constitution and government blueprint for what independent Scotland would be like. Now, Alex Salmond is a member of the Bilderberg Group. And he's also, one thing he said very, very clearly, and what a lot of people in his government have said, is they're quite happy to maintain relationship with the European Union. So even though they're going to be becoming independent from Great Britain, they're not leaving the EU.
That tells you right there,
closer to the EU.
Tells you right there, it's a big fucking scam.
Exactly.
From the get-go, you know instantly it's a scam. When I first heard of Scottish independence, I was like, fuck yeah. Get out of Britain. Get out of the English nonsense. Tell them to go fuck themselves. Do your own deal. Absolutely. But I always assumed, and obviously it seems like it was an incorrect assumption, that they'd be doing the same to the EU.
No such luck.
Then what's the point?
If only they were.
What's the fucking point?
There's no point. In fact,
it's a waste of time.
Absolutely. In fact, they're jumping out the frying pan into the fire.
Exactly.
Big time. And I'm also concerned about not only how this will affect Scotland. It will be bad news for Scotland if they become less, I was going to say independent, but it's not. If they were going to switch their semi-independence from Britain to full dependency on the European Union.
They should tell England to go fuck themselves. They should tell the EU to suck my dick. And they should just become independent and do their own thing. And that's the end of that.
Well, if they did that, Gareth, I'd be 100% behind them.
Of course,
Of course. If only the thing that what I'm also concerned about is not just how this affects Scotland, is how this affects the rest of the country. Because as I said, Britain, as a political entity, is a stumbling block to full EU integration. I'm not a British nationalist. I'm not a patriot of any kind. I don't support the UK Independence Party or the BNP or anything like that. But I mean, I think we need to be careful not to be sucked into playing the game which they are laying out. Now, if Britain is a stumbling block to EU integration, people have to be aware of that, and they must be careful not to let go of that stumbling block. What's going to happen now? Now, if Scotland becomes independent, the Welsh are going to be offered something similar.
Lovely.
The Welsh boys will want to be independent. My own uncle will certainly. I mean, the irony is my uncle is actually still a very, very rabid Welsh nationalist, and he's a member of Plaid Cymru.
Yeah.
He's very, very keen. He says that he is a federalist. He calls himself a federalist.
Really? In which way?
He says he wants an independent, quote, Wales as an active member state of the European Union. And I don't have much to do with him nowadays, and I hardly ever see him. But I mean, I think to myself, you idiot! Can't you see? This is a real. He's being a fool. What's going to happen is we could be left with just England on its own, and maybe Northern Ireland. There's even talk about there's power sharing in Northern Ireland now, which may mean that Northern Ireland will be sucked into the Republic of Ireland, the actual Republic of Ireland is already a fully integrated EU member state under the Lisbon Treaty. We could be looking. I mean, what we're looking at, it's rather like when you're washing up. If you're washing up in a bowl full of dirty water and you get a big lump of potato, you might want to just shove it down the plug hole. And I think this is what Britain wants to be shoved down the plug hole into the EU. What you do is you break it up with your fingers into smaller bits, and then it'll go down.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. If Britain won't go into the EU as a single political entity, they're going to break it up into its constituent parts and absorb them each independently.
Exactly.
And this is why I would say to the Scots, a few years ago, I would never believe I'd say this, but I am saying them, vote no.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. I remember when I was a kid, growing up in Wales, and this must have been in the early 80s, there was a referendum, for Wales to separate from England and to become its own deal. And I remember as a kid growing up thinking, well, why would they want to do that? I mean, shouldn't it make most sense if we're all together? Isn't there strength in numbers? If we're all together, isn't it better? And I could never get my head around it as a kid. Looking back at it now, I mean, fuck yeah, get out of there, do your own thing, right?
Yeah,
but
I would say quit the European Union though, as well as the EU. Quit all the other things as well.
I mean, I hear the same thing over here. As far as the Constitution of the United States, any state can secede from the Union and become its own independent entity. And nobody has done. People they've threatened a million times. We're going to do it. No, it's never happened, right? But I think it would be awesome. I mean, the economy in California alone is stronger than most of the economies on the fucking planet.
That's right. I think you're the fifth biggest economy on the planet.
That's just California. Just the
California.
State. So if California was to say fuck you to the rest of America, of the rest of the United States, and you know what, we're becoming our own fucking country, it's doable.
It's certainly doable. Not only is it doable, I mean,
and it would be a very prosperous country too.
It would if Californians had their head screwed on and they were aware of the scams that are going to be played on them. Because I mean, the first thing it would do if one of the states decided to secede from the Union, as they're threatening to do, is the rest of the USA, the federal government would do everything it could. Plus, its various corporate partners would do everything it could to make life difficult for that state.
Exactly. Yes.
And that's what they will use. Basically, there would be economic war.
Oh yeah, it would never happen. It would never happen. You'd have to be very, very strong and have a very good fortitude to pull it off. Because they would do everything they possibly could to knock that shit on the head.
This is why I mean any entity like that wants to become independent. Supposing Nebraska or something decided to become an independent country and leave the federation, then they have to be aware of that, and they have to be ready for that, and they have to make plans for that.
Oh, they'd be sabotaged like you wouldn't believe. I mean, there's been many threats. I think Texas has threatened a bunch of times to tell them to go fuck themselves, and Texas has a very independent attitude, and I love that.
Yeah, there's even a Texas Republic website which used to actually sell David Icke books.
Yes, I think it's the greatest. They're very much kind of like we're Texans, fuck you. I love that. But they've threatened it, but it's never happened, unfortunately, because it only takes the one to say we're out, and other states will think, oh, well, wait a second, let's see what happens here. You know what I mean? Because
well, it was tried. You remember, it was tried 150 years ago when the Confederate States was set up in the South. And the thing is, it was supposedly a war fought over slavery when it wasn't, because the truth of the matter was, I mean, the government in North, the Yankees, they had plans for slavery anyway. Right. They had people who live in wage slavery anyway.
Well, it still exists today. If you know wage slavery, remember, 90% of the population of the planet are slaves.
What they wanted to do, what Abraham Lincoln wanted to do, was they fought the war basically to shut down that independence movement, that resistance. Not that it was necessarily an anti-New World Order. I'm not saying the South was anti-New World Order or anything, but they just had different political ideas to what the actual prevailing government, the world leaders wanted at that time.
What people fail to realize is that unions of the consolidation of power, whether it be a village becoming a town becoming a city becoming a state becoming a country joining other countries becoming a union, all of these things do not benefit people. They benefit governments, right?
Yeah.
That's all. It's all designed to, because if the consolidation of power, consolidation of control and manipulation, for those at the top of the pyramid, it makes things a lot easier for them to control the masses if there's a consolidation of these states and countries and the like. Yeah. So for governments, this kind of consolidation is fucking awesome. It makes their lives so much easier. But for the people, for the individuals living in those countries, they're being fucked every day, right? Because if, like in the UK, right, there's a lot of crazy ass laws, right, with the health and safety and all this nonsense.
A lot of it's European,
right? Yeah, just pumped over, and it's retard shit, right? Mental cases dreaming up this bullshit. But let's just say that I don't know, that there's a law passed in England saying every Wednesday you have to stand on one leg for 2 hours. That's the law.
Wouldn't surprise me,
right? And everyone does that. Well, let's just say you're like, you know what? Fuck that. I don't want to do that. Well, you can leave. You can go to another country where that law doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, pal. It's the European Union. You're fucked. That law's everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's that's why the consolidation is bad. Because if you're living in an area where the government is unjust or mental or whatever,
which is most places,
you can leave. You can go someplace else where they're not fucking crazy. Whereas if everything's consolidated, if everything is ruled by the same guy at the top of the pyramid, then you got no place to go, because everywhere you go is the same shit.
It's
right.
There's a really, really good book actually by it's a guy called E.F. Schumacher, who wrote a book called Small is Beautiful, and its subtitle is Economics as if People Mattered.
Yeah.
And it goes into all this. It goes into all these dangers of centralization. And it warns against things like communism as well. It explains why that's not a solution. And it explains that it's written a long time ago. It's written about 40 years ago, but it's a herald of things like gross corporatism, international banking, and things like that. And it warns. What the book is suggesting is that people actually come together. Don't get involved. Be careful to avoid that kind of economics and go back to small local economics.
Yeah.
There's a movement in India now there's something called the Jivika Trust, which is promoting. India has a great tradition in this as a country, in each village being independent economically, growing its own food, trading with other villages on the one-to-one basis.
Yeah.
And Schumacher is saying that this is a model that we could all use, and it would break the power structure. I mean, we'd have to struggle, because the corporatocracy wouldn't go quickly. It
would take a while, and then they would.
It would take a while. Take a lot of struggle against that. But that would be the thing to aim for. This is why I joined the People's Supermarket. This is why I'm so upset that the People's Supermarket is gone. It's closed down.
Well, I mean, today's show has surprisingly been like a show about economics, employment, and all that kind of stuff.
It's important
and
things.
I'm coming up to the last story today, and this was not planned, by the way, but it does kind of tie into what we've been talking about, and I'd really like to get your take on this also. Now, this involves the big issue. Now, in the United States, you might not be aware of what the big issue is, but Ben, maybe you could explain a little bit what the big issue is and what goes on with that in the UK.
Sure. I mean, I think the big issue has now reached the United States. It's certainly in Australia.
Oh, okay.
What it is, it's a magazine that was published. It started off as a small operation. It's now grown into a massive national publication. What it is, it's a very, very special magazine because you can't buy it in shops. You can only buy it from homeless people, and these are people who are either homeless or have been homeless in the recent past. And the magazine, basically, they sell the magazine for however much it costs now. It was £2 when I last bought a copy, and they get to keep £1 and they give £1 back in, and they buy their next set of magazines from that. And the magazine actually covers the issue of homelessness, but it covers a lot of other issues as well, political issues, economic, social issues as well. And it's really it's become quite glossy over the years, and it's I buy it whenever I can. I mean, Problem is, I can't afford it very much now, but I certainly used to.
Sounds like a very depressing magazine, Ben.
Well, actually, it's quite uplifting. It's got a lot of humour in it. It's quite optimistic. It always provides solutions to any problems. Like when we had the drought, so-called drought, at the beginning of last year, they suggested, well, Scotland at that time was getting far, far more water, so someone suggested building pipelines to pump Scottish water down into England.
Oh, there you go.
Which sounds like little common sense, Of course, that was all. A few months later, the drought ended, which of course it was bound to, and we had all the water we needed.
It's still pretty staggering that a country like the UK, that's 90% of the year it's fucking hammering down with rain, has to deal with a drought. I mean, that's insanity.
Yeah. Well, it's basically the reason they couldn't cope with it because the water system has gone down the toilet. But no, the magazine itself is really, really good. I mean, you often walk along the street, you see people selling this. Instead of begging and sitting in corners begging,
selling
you give
the
us a few pence. They say, "Do you want to buy this?" And you can read it.
So here's a little news clip I discovered this week, which is a little bizarre to say the least, and it involves the big issue. So let's have a listen to this.
An enterprising big issue seller has become the first in the UK to accept card payments with his own chip and pin machine.
Basically, I was finding a lot of my customers were coming up and they would like to buy the magazine, but they wouldn't have change on them or no cash at all, or they'd try and offer you high denomination notes, like £20 notes. No, I wouldn't necessarily have to change for them. So I thought there has to be a way around this. There has to be. So I looked on the internet. I found a Swedish company called iZettle. They have a mobile chip and pin reader, connects via Bluetooth to a smartphone.
Simon sells between 80 to 100 copies of the magazine per week, of which he says between 5 and 10 are paid for by card.
It's boosted sales. Some people like the idea of paying by card. It saves me carrying the cash. It's within my bank account within 3 days, so it's very beneficial.
Simon carries a small black box which links up with his smartphone to accept card payments and track transactions. Data from cards is not stored on the device.
It is safer because obviously there has been situations in the past where big issue sellers have been mugged for their takings. I know it's a sad state of society we live in at the moment, but it's obviously that it's more secure and it's in your bank account within 3 days, so it's much safer.
Simon, a former London Underground driver, has been selling the big issue for the last 3 years after an accident at work eventually left him homeless. Big issue sellers keep half their takings from a sale, so with around 2,000 vendors across Britain, Simon's new way of attracting customers is likely to spread fast.
So this is interesting on many levels to me. The first thing that kind of leaps out, and they say in the clip itself, that this is used to track payments.
Yeah.
They actually say that in the clip. So, if you're buying one of these magazines and you give the guy a couple of pounds, whatever, a couple of quid, here you go, boom. It's untraceable. They have no idea who purchased that magazine. They have no clue. They don't know whether or not the guy has put all the cash in his pocket or whether it's giving it directly to the company, whatever the case may be. But by using a credit card, it's tracked. Not only do they know exactly how much was paid, they know who bought it, where they live, what their economic structure is, what their name is, what their address is, what kind of things they like to purchase. They know all this information instantly from swiping a card. The security versus convenience is out the window, right? Because it suddenly becomes very convenient to swipe your card. And you're not only paying them for the big issue, right? But you're paying them with all of your information is suddenly being sucked into a database.
It's I can see exactly what you mean. I wouldn't be surprised if those people, when they buy a big issue with their card, they get home, they open up their inbox and email, and they find spam related to what they just bought.
Exactly, or something.
Something because, of course, there's this internet marketing and advertising now is targeted on particular individuals, and you're categorized and you're sent spam. I mean, I've had this myself. I know that I've been categorized myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the kind of spam I get.
Another thing I noticed, which kind of leapt out at me watching this clip, is the guy who's selling the big issue. It was kind of. I mean, this guy is apparently homeless. I mean, as far as I know. I mean, who knows? Maybe he's not. But the story. I mean, he's selling the big issue, which leads me to think that he's either homeless or economically deprived in some way. But this guy is highly articulate. In fact, he's better at being interviewed than the chick who's doing the news story.
Yeah, he's probably. I mean, he probably. Chances are he's living in a normal. He probably lives in shelters, accommodation. They have like there's a thing called a gatehouse in Oxford, where people can stay if they pay 50p or something like that. But I mean, he was obviously selected. I mean, I don't think I doubt if they chose him at random for this story or to trial out this new system of payment. Well, what do you reckon?
Well, the picture that they paint here is that this whole thing, as far as him selling it using his credit card reader, it's all him. This has nothing to do with the big issue as a company or a corporation or whatever the case may be. They have nothing to do with this. This is entirely his deal. Because
I doubt that very much.
What he's saying is that he's been selling this thing for 3 years, and there's so many times you'll say, big issue. Oh, sorry, I don't have any change, or I only have a 20-pound note, or blah, blah, blah. But now he has this, oh, well, you can swipe your card. Oh, okay, I guess I'll buy one then. Boom.
And he says that this was his decision to set up this system, and he didn't, because if you agree to sell, I mean, I've spoken to some of the guys who sell these magazines when I used to buy them.
Yeah.
They're very strict. I mean, the rules and regulations are very strict. They have a strict code of conduct and things like that. And I don't think that they would allow someone to bring in a card reader just for their own purposes. I don't think they would. I think it would have to be a decision made at the management of the big issue.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, then again, I mean, like you said, I doubt these guys. He was obviously a well-spoken man. He used to be a tube train driver.
Yeah.
You know, he was a professional man before he had an accident and he was left homeless. They probably selected him specifically to trial the scheme because they knew he'd be interviewed by the media. And the things he says are very interesting because what he says is actually very much applies to everybody, whether you're homeless or not. The danger of losing your cash in crime, street robbery.
Sure.
The various problems with fraud and stuff like that, about how things, you know, it's the lack of accountability and things like that.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with that, I mean, I've spoken about this before, is that is being used as a way of imposing more and more financial controls on the individuals. It's about privacy, but it's also about the freedom to spend money both anonymously and through your own free choice.
Yeah, well, that's...
If you do away with privacy, if you do away with financial privacy, then somebody might decide to try and dictate what you do with your own money.
Yeah, and that's what's being eroded here, is financial privacy. You with cash, right, you can walk into any store, purchase anything completely anonymously, right? Yeah. Because you're paying with cash. The second you pull out your credit card, they got you. They know exactly what you're buying, what you're doing with your money, not that anyone gives a fuck about you and is watching what you're doing. Of course not. But it's recorded. It's in a database. At a later date, they could go back and pull up a very accurate database on you. Right?
This is a problem. This is the issue, isn't it? I mean, they may decide that it could be when someone controls the computer. In a sense, they control your financial activity. They could decide.
It's like books too, right, Ben? I mean, you know, you and I read certain books that might not be, you know, the greatest reading material that people want to you know be aware of, right? You know. Whereas if you go and you purchase a book and you pay cash, well then, who's to know that you have that book?
No, exactly.
Nobody.
It's complete freedom. Cash is freedom from all surveillance and all. It makes economic activity your own activity.
Right.
You choose
but there's another level to this also, because ebooks are becoming more and more prevalent. Right. They're more convenient. In other words, let's just say David Icke comes out with a new book tomorrow, and I want to get that book. Well, I can sit at my computer, click a button, 5 seconds later, I got the book, and it's cheaper than the regular book.
Yeah,
right?
It's just
or I can get into my car, drive to a bookstore. Hopefully, they have it. Right? Maybe they don't. Big hassle, pain in the ass. Maybe I got to order it, blah, blah, blah. But I can pay cash and nobody knows I've got that book and I'm reading that book.
Yeah.
Whereas if I get it conveniently, one click, boop, not only am I paying with credit cards, they can see exactly what I've purchased, but they can see, they know I have that book. They know exactly what I'm reading.
Yeah. Now, all tyrannical regimes have tried to ban books. The Nazis did it, the Soviets did it.
Sure.
All tyrannical regimes have tried to ban people's access to certain pieces of art and literature, etc. Now, what happened was that you got book burnings. I mean, we've had this there's this famous photograph and film of the Nazis burning books by Jewish authors. They're just piling them in the street and setting fire to them and burning them. There's Einstein's relativity goes on there as well, all of them. Now, what happened was the thing about a book is a paper book, which is printed and distributed as paper in a traditional book, is once it's sold a certain number of copies over a wide enough area, it becomes virtually indestructible.
Right.
Because you can never, ever get hold of every single copy.
Exactly.
And indeed, when those regimes fell in those countries, people would come out of their house saying, "Oh, I had one in my attic all along. Here it is."
Yes.
But the thing is, if everyone is using electronic books, the book is destructible. It's no longer as resilient.
And we've seen
you don't even need to burn it. You just need to press a button,
and it's gone.
Beep, and it's gone.
It deletes it. Right.
1984 by George Orwell. Press a button. It's gone.
That's what happened. Do you remember that case with Amazon a few years ago?
Oh, with 1984 going missing, that's right.
Yeah, they deleted it from everyone's device. They were like, "What the fuck? Where's this book gone?" Boom. I mean, admittedly, they fixed it and they gave everyone the book back, but it proved that it can be done.
Yeah, and it was appropriate it happened with 1984. I mean, you may think someone there's trying to drop hints.
It could be,
warning people,
Exactly. Now, there's something even more insidious that can be done here that people may or may not be aware of with digital books, is that digital books can be edited on the fly without your knowledge. In other words, you could purchase a book on your Kindle or your iPad or whatever the fuck and be happily, I've got this book, la da da. And let's just say certain words, phrases, sentences, paragraphs, pages, whatever, are not in conformance with whatever political nonsense is available. They can literally go in there without your permission and without your knowledge and change the content of the book.
That's right.
Now, let me just clarify. I'm not saying that this is happening. I'm not saying that this is going on right now. In fact, I doubt that it is happening. But it is possible. This can be done.
I think when it comes to Big Brother and censorship and all these other things that the government's doing, we have to deal with capabilities, not professed intents or possible intents. We have to deal with capabilities.
It's the same thing with that guy. Who's that dude with? I forget his name. You know him, the guy with the street lights, the LED street lights.
Miles Johnson.
Miles Johnson. Now he's on there. Blah blah blah. The street lights, they can control people, and when you hear that, you think this guy's a fucking mental case. What is wrong with this guy? But what he's saying is true. Now, right? This can be. It doesn't mean that it is being done or that it even will be done. All he's saying is that it can be done. Right?
I think when it comes to if something can be done and something is needed to be done in order to maintain the power of the system over the people, it will be done.
Well, you're probably correct, Ben. It's very, very likely. But what we're saying is that, is this stuff happening? No. Will it happen? Who knows? Probably not. But it can happen. It is technically possible for these things to happen. And people dismiss that, right? Because when they hear, they can edit books, or the LED lights can affect your brainwaves, and get the fuck, what's the matter with you? You're out of your mind. You're a fucking lunatic. And you're like, no. I'm not saying that this is happening or even will happen. I'm just saying that it's possible.
Yeah, and it's worth remembering there are already plans to escalate the cashless society to make it easier to pay without cash, to make it harder to pay with cash. And there's even talk about, you can even now get your bank details put on subcutaneous microchips, actually little miniature microprocessors that you put into your body.
Well, you see it happen. I'm an Apple user. I love Apple stuff. But when I go to the Apple store, right, to the Mac store, and I purchase something, I can be in and out of there in 5 minutes, because I just go in, I want that, there it is, swipe. They don't even give me a printed receipt. They email me the receipt. I'm done. Or I can go and pay cash and be there for half an hour dealing with lines and bullshit. And so it's convenience, right?
Yeah.
And it's all moving towards that. You can be in and out of a store in 3 seconds, or you can be there for 45 minutes dealing with fucking retards and cash.
There's
but
a
it's
department
anonymous.
store in Singapore where people just go in and they go in, they pick things up. This is how it's planned to do, and you just carry them out the store. And when you carry them out the store, a reader installed in the store doorway reads your card for you inside your pocket,
right,
or your mobile phone device, and eventually, obviously, the microprocessor that's put inside your body.
Deducted from your bank account, and that's the end of that.
Exactly, and if you go in there and you haven't got one of these a compatible device on you, then you're not allowed access. You're told you have to leave. An alarm goes off, and you can't go into the shop at all.
Yeah.
And everyone's gushing over. Oh, it'll stop shoplifting. It will. It's wonderful.
Well, I mean, if you look at it from a pure consumer benefit, I mean, you could basically you don't even need people. You just walk into the store, whatever you fancy, whatever you want, you just pick up and leave. I like this. Just pick it up and just walk out of the store.
Yeah. It is one of these kind of things which makes you think. It seems to make perfect sense on one level until you realise that this technology can be good or bad.
Sure,
I mean, and I can understand that it's convenient. I can understand that, but it's in the hands of people. If it was in the hands of people, I think we could trust, I would say fine. But it's not. It's in the hands of people. The political class of this world has a very, very different idea of what's beneficial for humanity than what we do.
Right. Well, it's ultimately fuck humanity. It's what's beneficial to them.
We put it in the hands of people who want us dead.
Everything in society, every law, every institution, everything exists to benefit them, not us. Right?
Exactly.
Everything we've talked about today, it's all done. When you look at just forget governments, a company, a corporation, everything that company or corporation does is designed to benefit the company and corporation, not its employees. They don't give I mean, if as an added benefit the employees are benefit, just like some random, well, if we do this, we can increase our profits by X, Y, and Z, but it'll also help our employees in this area. Oh, great. Win-win. Right? But if we do this and we increase our profits, but it's not going to benefit, well, so what? Let's go. Right? Yeah. So everything is designed to benefit the company and the corporation, not the individual, not the employee. And it's the same with the government. Everything the government sets out to do is designed to benefit the government, not the people. Which begs the fact you have to think about, well, if a government is not taking care of its people, what the fuck do we need a government for?
Well, it's a conflict of interest situation, isn't it, really? It's the ultimate conflict of interest situation.
Isn't the government's entire purpose, its entire reason to exist is to protect and benefit its population, right? If it's not protecting and benefiting its population, the fuck do we need a government for? Get the fuck out of here, right?
Well, according to Schumacher's model, you wouldn't need any government except local government. And really, you may need some sort of large, some sort of body to sort of like organise and sort of distribute and sort of act as some kind of federal system on a larger scale. But the actual work of government, and the original United States was actually intended to go along with this model. When it was first, well, at least they said it was. That basically. The areas of independence could be as small as you like. They could be as small as one village.
Yeah.
And as long as people can trade on a one-to-one basis freely between different. I mean, James Cox will tell you all about this. He uses the word voluntarist,
right? Yeah.
which is. I mean, I think a lot of what he says makes sense. I'm not sure I agree with every word of it, but I can see the point he's making.
Sure.
You could actually. I don't think you could use that to solve the system that we have now. But I think once the system, I think in the future it would be certainly an ideal in the post-Illuminati world. It would be an ideal system.
Right. I mean, he everything he says. I agree with. It makes sense, but it's fantasy. Cuckoo cloud fucking utopian nonsense, basically.
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, what I think these people, I think these people have made they've sort of confused the ultimate goal with the solution. I mean, any injection of anarcho-capitalism into the present system would be an absolute disaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, this is Ayn Rand, who's a lady. She was Russian originally, but she moved and she spent most of her life in the United States.
Yeah,
she first talked about this, a long time ago. I think she's very famous in America, isn't she?
She is, yeah. I saw her. I was at a bookstore on Friday at Barnes & Noble, and I saw her book there, the Atlas Shrugged. I've never read it. I've always been tempted to read it, but I've never read Atlas Shrugged.
All 1,200 pages of it.
Yeah, and I was looking at it. I'm like, fuck, that's a big book.
And I'll tell you what, right?
It's fucking huge.
About Ayn Rand. I always say that reading Ayn Rand changed my life because I developed chronic backache carrying a book home from the library.
I should get the Kindle version, I guess.
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah,
that's another benefit for electronic books. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I've never read it. Everyone, you should read that book. You should read it. But no, I never have. And I've
read it. It took me about God knows how long it took me.
A long
to
time.
read it.
Is it worth a read, Ben? What do you think?
It is worth the read.
Yeah.
It's the same with The Fountainhead, who's a 1941 novel. It's about half the length. It's a lot better.
Oh, really? Okay, maybe
Fountainhead,
I should check, because I haven't read any of her stuff. Maybe I should check.
It's got some interesting ideas in, but I certainly don't agree with all of them by a long way.
Well, I think that kind of wraps it up, Ben. We've had a great conversation. We've had a great little chat today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Exactly. Just two of us here. And Schumacher was right. Small is beautiful.
Exactly. And we've flown through, almost 2 hours of the show here. And it's been great. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And we've tackled some great topics. So thank you once again for coming on board. Thank the listeners for tuning in and listening to the Mindset Podcast. Please consider subscribing and or donating to Mindset Central. It is our life's blood. It does keep the lights on and keep things moving here. So please, if you love the shows, if you like listening, you like the site, please consider supporting Mindset Central with either a one-time donation or a subscription. And if you subscribe, you have access to all the behind-the-scenes goodies. So please consider that. We'd really appreciate it. Ben, where can you be discovered on the interwebs?
Hapanwo, Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. And that's my website.
Pride and Dignity.
Pride and Dignity, Brother Porter. Yeah.
Excellent. Check out Ben's website and check out his superb YouTube channel, which was it YouTube/Ben the Junior Porter. Is that right?
Ben the JR Porter. Yes.
Check that out. Some great videos. Ben is very prolific in the video department, and he has some great stuff up there. So please hop on over there if you haven't been over there already and check out some of Ben's videos. Well, Ben, that kind of does it. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back next week with more comments, topics, and conspiracies. Until then, farewell, good brothers.